In Revenge of the Sith, shortly after having her heart broken and nearly being choked to death by Darth Vader, Padme Amidala dies in childbirth. At the time, the nurse droids who deliver Padme's children claim that medically she is completely healthy, but for reasons they cannot explain, she is dying. The droids conclude that the Queen's eventual death occurs as a result of nothing more than lack of a will to live. This, of course, does not tell the full story. Autopsy reports released later on would conclude two things. First, that the bones, organs, and muscles of Padme's throat showed obvious signs of strangulation. And second, that her child had died along with her. The latter claim was included as a means to conceal the survival of the newborn Skywalker twins who would have otherwise been hunted down by Imperial forces. And the significant damage to Padme's airways would indicate a more likely cause of death than a mere broken heart. Given this information, it is safe to assume that Padme was actually in much worse physical condition than was initially thought, and that the lack of desire or will to live due to what she had witnessed on Mustafar was only the finishing touch on what was in all actuality a murder, albeit an unintentional one. It is clear based on the reports that Padme was in fact killed by Darth Vader's rage, and the reason the droids could not make this conclusion during the birth of Luke and Leia was because the damage was not visible on the exterior. Darth Vader's crushing force choke did its damage from the inside, making it impossible both to identify until after death, and also to definitively tie anyone to the murder, as the strangulation was executed without physical contact. But sometime after the release of Revenge of the Sith, a very interesting and plausible theory emerged, and it suggests a much different reality in regards to who was truly responsible for Padme's death. To this day, it has neither been confirmed nor denied that it was actually Darth Sidious who delivered the final blow in the waning moments of Padme's life. That as Lord Vader's new cybernetics and life support systems were installed, and his new helmet came over his head, the Emperor drew the final ounces of Padme's life and transferred them to his new apprentice. This idea seems to check out with the events of the movie, as Vader's first breath is directly followed by Padme's last. And it is further supported by the reality that Padme's death is what will ultimately solidify Vader's turn. As long as she lives, no matter the circumstances, the threat of Anakin Skywalker's reawakening will always loom. But if she is dead, Darth Vader will have no reason to return. His pain, his anger, his hatred, and his self-induced misery upon learning that he killed his wife and his unborn child will push him far over the edge. This is the final straw which Palpatine pulls with perfect timing, and had Vader not nearly choked Padme to death on Mustafar, that opportunity may not have presented itself. So what are my thoughts? Despite the evidence in favor of this theory, I tend to side with the belief that this is likely not true. One, because the evidence we just discussed is pretty circumstantial and up for interpretation, and two, because I simply believe the events of the story indicate that Vader did indeed kill his wife. I think that's a major part of the great tragedy of Anakin Skywalker. It's his greatest failure and his greatest act of betrayal. Padme was the driving force behind his turn. He fell to the dark side under the belief that it was the only way to save her, and instead he ends up killing her in pursuit of that goal because ultimately he chose the wrong path. He fell for Palpatine's deception, and that's the reality of the situation to me. Palpatine did not have to kill Padme outright because Vader already did. So in a way, Palpatine was still responsible because he is behind this entire grand plan, but in the end, it's Darth Vader who delivers that fatal stroke. He is the one who physically choked her and then dropped her helpless body to the ground, and he is also the one who ultimately shattered her spirit. Now that's just what I believe the reality is. I'm not necessarily saying I am opposed to the idea of the Palpatine theory. I actually don't have any problem with it. It's no secret that Palpatine is unbelievably evil, and every project we get just seems to make him more and more menacing, so this is definitely a legitimate possibility. However, I do think it takes away a little bit from the tragedy of Anakin's fall. Anakin's turn is executed through decision after decision that he consciously makes, each of which pushes him further toward the dark side and further away from the light. It's Anakin who decides to turn against Mace Windu. It's Anakin who storms the Jedi Temple and murders the Jedi younglings. It's Anakin who murders Padme, and it's Anakin who elects to fight Obi-Wan Kenobi. These events solidify his turn all on their own. Palpatine didn't have to interfere too much in these situations. It is only when Vader learns that he killed Padme that the last hope of his return to the light is put out. And I know you could simply say that that's precisely why Palpatine told him he was responsible, even though it wasn't the truth, and that does make sense. I'm just saying it's a more tragic and an even more logical story to place the true blame on Darth Vader, because his murder of Padme puts the spark out, but the emergence of his son rekindles that spit of hope, and that intensifies his conflict as he can't bring himself to make that fatal mistake again. He won't kill his own son as he did his wife, and that little inkling of light which he tries so hard to bury eventually erupts into a fire of blazing glory, as Vader rises above his past, destroying the Sith and the Empire to save his son. But what do you guys think? Do you think Padme was already going to die after the incident with Vader on Mustafar? Or do you believe that Palpatine put the finishing touch on her life, both as a means to save his apprentice and to solidify his commitment to the dark side? Drop a comment below and let me know what you guys think. Please remember to give this video a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and of course, may the Force be with you always.